Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The End of Castles. I am going to do a follow up to just follow the instructions. I initially was not going to do a follow up to it, but as I continued to read it, I wanted to continue the storyline because it kind of follows up with how you should just follow the instructions instead of going out. The reason why you should follow the instructions instead of going out on your own accord. Last week, we spoke about Naaman and his issue of leprosy and how he sought out Elijah, one of God's prophets, to heal him. Now, Naaman was given some instructions in which he followed and was healed of his leprosy. Now we'll discuss what happened after Naaman was healed. You see, Naaman followed the instructions, but we will show how you can hurt yourself by not following the instructions and or proceeding with your own plans without God's guidance. The first video dealt with 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 14. This time we're going to be coming from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 15 through 27, and we're going to be talking about Gehazi. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant." The prophet answered, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing." And even though Naaman urged him, he refused. "If you would not," said Naaman, "please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry, for your servant would never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this." "Go in peace," Elisha said. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elijah, the man of God, said to himself, "My master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him." So Gehazi hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw him running towards him, he got down from the chariot to meet him. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Everything is all right," Gehazi answered. "My master sent me to say, 'Two young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing.'" "By all means, take 2 talents," said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them, and then tied up the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 sets of clothing. He gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them ahead of Gehazi. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servants and put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. When he went in and stood before his master, Elijah asked him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "Your servant didn't go anywhere," Gehazi answered. But Elijah said to him, "Was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money, or to accept clothes, or olive groves and vineyards, or flocks and herds, or male and female slaves? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever." Then Gehazi went from Elijah's presence, and his skin was leprous, and it had become as white as snow. Starting back in verse 15, now Naaman had to give homage to the man that healed him, Elijah, a man whose God is more powerful than any other God. I can feel gratitude in Naaman's spirit. I can feel the joy from his servants. They are elated and overjoyed with excitement. They have witnessed something miraculous, an incurable disease cured right before their eyes. Elijah definitely walks with the Almighty God. Even their faith was increased with the miracle they witnessed. Yes, they influenced Naaman to just follow the instructions Elijah gave him. But to be completely cured of an incurable disease when you do can have everlasting memories and moments you will never forget. And it came about by just following the instructions. When Naaman returned to Elijah, This time Elijah came to meet him, and Naaman wanted to present a gift to Elisha. Elijah refused any gift that Naaman offered him. God didn't instruct Elijah to accept anything from Naaman. So Elijah was just following God's instructions. In verse 17, Naaman requests something that was heartfelt to me, especially due to the way of the world today with Pride Month and the indoctrination of our kids. Now, going back to verses 17 through 18, it says, if you will not, in other words, Elijah will not accept the gift from Naaman. If you would not, said Naaman, please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry. For your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other God but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. Now, Naaman knows Elijah's God is the one true God, but now he knows that his master serves a false God. He no longer wants to serve that false God, but he is obligated to his master. Naaman says he would never make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other God, but he would be with his master when his master goes to worship his false God. Naaman is asking for the Lord to forgive him every time he must go with his master to Rimmon and help his master bow down before his false God. Naaman, with a sincere heart, asked this of Elijah to present his request before God. How does this relate to today? At the time of this video, we are in Pride Month 2023. Now, unless you have been hiding under a rock, this world is in an uproar over Pride Month being celebrated in schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. The parents and their kids may disagree with this type of a lifestyle. They still have to go to class and be shown inappropriate materials that disagrees with their Christian beliefs or even just their beliefs. They cannot unsee or unhear anything. They can feel like they are in the devil's lair and cannot get out. They are having to bow in Rimmon because their authority is worshiping a false god right before their eyes. And they do not want to disrespect their authority figures. Naaman and those kids are in the same situation. But God is saying, I will cover you and send people to fight on your behalf simply because you follow my instructions. You follow my commandments. Now back to the story of Elisha and Naaman. Elisha put Naaman's spirit at peace. His request was granted by God, and God covered him with forgiveness before Naaman had done the wrong. Let me repeat that again for you. See if you get it. His request was granted by God, and God covered him with forgiveness before Naaman had done the wrong. Sounds familiar? Okay. Gehazi, one of Elijah's servants, decided to create his own instructions and follow them. Instead of just watching his master follow God's instructions by not accepting anything from Naaman, he decides to create his own instructions. And just like a lot of us do, we put the Lord's name on top of our own desires. Gehazi says, as surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. Did the Lord instruct him to do so? No. Sometimes it's best for you to be still if you do not hear any instructions. Gehazi knew God didn't send him because he had to lie to Naaman in order to get his way. He said, my master sent me. 2 travelers have arrived. We need a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. Those were not instructions from Elijah or God. Naaman complied because he has nothing to lose, and he was probably happy that Elijah was accepting a gift from him. So Naaman followed the instructions, unaware they were not from Elijah or God, and gave Gehazi what he thought Elijah requested. Now Naaman was so pleased he gave Gehazi 2 talents of silver instead of 1. He sent his men to help Gehazi get home with the gifts. Gehazi, knowing he was wrong, took the gifts at the top of the hill and went home. not wanting Elijah to see him with Naaman's servants or he would be caught. Gehazi hid the items in his home. Translation: I was not instructed to do this, so I better hide my wrongdoing. When he went into Elijah, Elijah was aware of Gehazi's wrongdoing. His offense was against Elijah, Naaman, and most importantly, God, a God you can't hide from. When Elijah asked Gehazi where did he go, Gehazi pretended he didn't go anywhere. But Elijah's spirit was with Gehazi because God had shown Gehazi's wrongdoing through the spirit of Elijah. In verse 26, it says, is this the time to take money or to accept clothes, or olive groves and vineyards, or flocks and herds, or male and female slaves? Translation: God didn't instruct us to accept any money, clothes, olive groves, flocks, herds, slaves, or anything from Naaman. God had obtained his prized possession, Naaman's heart. Gehazi was cursed with the leprosy that was cleansed from Naaman, and it would affect his family lineage just because he created his own instructions. If you don't hear anything from God after you have prayed, just sit still and wait. It's good to follow God's instructions when you get them, but remember to wait on God's instructions instead of taking matters into your own hands. We make the wrong decisions when we do and end up in a leprous, unclean lifestyle that is unbecoming of God and what he knows is best for us. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of The End of Castles. And as always, when godly wisdom ascends, a new mindset begins. Bye bye.